Hello, everyone.
Hi, friends.
Let's jump straight in. Jordan
Let's
Peterson.
do it.
I see a backlash against masculinity, and a sense that there's something toxic about
But
masculinity.
what is this idea
as
of being
such.
over? Why is society overly feminized?
Well, I didn't ever say that society was overly feminized. So if we're going to discuss my views, we should use my actual words. I believe that there's a danger in our society at the moment of making the assumption that our culture, for example, is a tyrannical patriarchy, which it is in some small part, and that any active engagement on the part of young men in particular is indistinguishable from an unacceptable power and dominance drive, which I don't believe.
But surely
I think all of that is inappropriate and incorrect.
If much of the power and authority over a very long historical period has lain with men, isn't it only inevitable that some men will get a little hacked off when women are given a stab at something approaching equality?
Well, that could be inevitable, but that doesn't make it right, and it's certainly not something that I support. So
So you think men's resentment is more important than women's effort to attain equality?
I'm not in favor of resentment at all. I think that if you're resentful, something's definitely wrong. Either you need to grow the hell up and take stock of your life, or you have some things to say to people that you haven't been saying.
You say science undoubtedly shows us that men and women have different traits, and there's a lot of science to back you up on that. But you say that because of that, men are hardwired to achieve success and to be successful in a way that women are not.
No, not at all. I've never said anything like that. I've said that there are biological differences between men and women that express themselves in temperament and in occupational choice, and that any attempt to enforce equality of outcome is unwarranted and ill-advised as a consequence.
And yet some of the most successful societies, judged on contentment indices or indeed material success, are those, for example, in Scandinavia.
Where the temperamental differences between men and women are larger than they are in any other society.
Well, so you say, you point out that in Scandinavia, many more women choose to be health workers than engineers, for example.
It's not what I say, it's what the large-scale scientific investigation has revealed.
Fair enough. But equally, Scandinavia is full of societies, one could point to Norway, where they've made a specific legislative effort, for example, with a quota of 40% of women on corporate boards or a quota for women to be in parliament. Right. They've specifically engaged in social engineering, and it seems to be working, and it seems to
doesn't seem to be working particularly.
Forgive me, but Norway is top of every contentment index that we see across the world.
Well, okay, so first of all, Norway has plenty of oil money, which is definitely contributing to that. And second, it depends on what you mean by working. There's no evidence, for example, that the legislation that was designed to increase the number of women on boards has produced any movement whatsoever in the number of women who hold managerial and administrative positions in Norway. The theory was that as societies became more egalitarian, that men and women would become more the same. But that isn't what's happened. What's happened is the biggest differences between men and women now, temperamentally and in terms of their own interest, have manifested themselves in the Scandinavian countries. And so what that will mean is that men and women will make different choices in occupation if you let them have free choice. Now, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to stop that from happening? Is that the feminist perspective?
Let's get back to a word I used before and ask you directly. Do you approve of, do you think it's a dangerous word, equality? This word equality.
I approve of equality of opportunity, but I think that equality of outcome considerations are detestable and dangerous beyond belief.
100%. Why is it so hard for feminists to accept that there's biologically driven differences within the sexes that makes women pursue certain careers, like nursing, for example, at a far higher rate than men? Why is that so shameful to them?
I don't know. It really goes back to how we would define success, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if a woman is happy being a nurse, being a teacher, very common for women to choose those careers, then she had success because she's doing what she chose to do.
Right.
It's not necessary for her to be a CEO to be successful.
Right.
So are they fighting for this to give themselves a better chance as a woman to reach that level instead of doing it on merit?
Yeah, it's so weird. It's almost like they're projecting their own insecurities of them not, how do you say, being feminine, being the nurturing type, not being a standard woman, what most women like to do these things. So they have their own masculine traits and they feel like less of a woman, essentially, right? And so they're projecting this onto society and exerting their power because these radical feminists are the few women in power chirping this crap everywhere to everybody.
That seems to be a
Right?
pattern of like the most extreme people want to reshape the entire structure of our society to fit what their ideal is.
Right. It's like she's ashamed that she pursued a career, almost ashamed that she doesn't have a family, that she had to trade that off and sees it in other women that
I
are
don't
happy at home.
I don't know if they're ashamed. I see a lot of them seem to be. I don't know if they're ashamed about it, but I do see a lot of women shaming, a lot of those women shaming other women that choose differently
Right?
from them.
Exactly. How dare you be a stay-at-home mom? Like, couldn't you want better for yourself? And the stay-at-home mom is happier than her, more blissful, loving life, raised a nurturing family. That must make them seething with anger. And so now they're trying to transform. No woman should be like that. Everybody should have cats and be unhappy like me, and then they go and they blame men. I hate this. We're in a patriarchy, blaming men. What are you talking about? A few select people make the decisions for everybody. Why are we making it a male versus female issue? It's just people in power, yet we're attacking men. It's evil to be a man these days. The patriarchy. Men are rapists. Men are this, violent. Men, we're placing a blame on all men from the top rungs of society to the very bottom.
Right.
What the hell?
Yeah, and these people in power, like, just because there are men in power, but that doesn't mean that the well-being of all men is being looked after.
Exactly.
Just like how we want to play identity politics. If a person is my skin color, that means they're going to look out for me.
Exactly.
That's not necessarily true.
Right. Like he was saying about Norway, like they have a 40% baked into legislation minimum for corporate structures. Like women have to represent 40%, right? Why? What is this optical illusion we're playing? Just because you have a vagina, you represent the interest of women? Like that's representation? The problem with society is baked into society itself, the government structure of how we govern ourselves. If you have an elected representative, right, that needs a public election to get there, that means men and women, all with their own needs, all with their own policies and issues that they want looked after, represented by this one singular voice they voted for. Don't you think that the person in that seat, in that position of power, had to get there representing the interest of the very constituents that put him there, right?
It should be that way.
Exactly.
Except we both know it's not.
Exactly.
And that's the real problem, that the government is corrupt and that the interest of the constituents aren't the priority.
Exactly.
And now, instead of fixing the corruption, we're saying, okay, well, let's just put a woman in power and that'll fix everything.
Right. It's like, yeah, the plight of women. Sure. Let's do 40% women. And optically, it looks good. Yeah, we just put some women in power. You mean the women in those executive suites aren't looking after their own self-interest in a corruptive manner, just like the men in those positions are? You're telling me that by doing 40% across the board everywhere, that all the people, whether it's by race, skin color or gender, that all of a sudden now equal representation for everybody. You know what I mean? That's like the fallacy of Barack Obama, being elected president, and it's like the black community was
all their
not going to
problems are
right,
fixed now.
all the problems are going to go
assume.
away. Everything's going to get fixed. Not a goddamn thing got fixed. People were complaining after, like, hey, what's going on here? You think we're going to elect a woman president soon? One day soon we will. And you think, all the problems of women are going to get fixed? They're nothing, because the system is broken. But putting someone in power because they share your skin color or have the same thing in between their legs is going to help you out is not how it works.
That's even more regressive, because now we have to pretend like we already solved that problem.
And then and then he made a point that men are resenting that women are looking for equality. I don't know any man that resents a woman wanting to be equal. That's a load of horseshit. What men are resenting is how these radical feminists are painting society as if men as a whole benefit and men as a whole are evil and men as a whole should like police themselves in their behaviors. Right, because you're gardener, because the guy mowing your lawn is obviously evil and oppressing you and holding you down as a woman. You mean, like, it's crazy. Men live these quiet lives of desperation, right? We're building society. Men are laying bricks, building roofs, everything, right? And they're doing them day after day. A man will literally work himself to death for his family to provide, come home shaking, multiple like 12 plus hour days, and they won't complain. And Father's Day rolls along and they get a hug and they get told nice. You know, men are not appreciated in society.
And that seeds into everything, because if I'm going to put my conspiracy hat on, right? What better way to have control over everyone in the society than to, you know,
Pacify
create
men.
this rift, pacify men, but also create this rift between men and women? Because what do you need for a family unit to be stable? You need a man and a woman that are willing to work together in order to create a harmonious household.
Exactly.
Right? And that's literally the pillar of our society, having families, those strong family units. That's what creates a better society.
Right. You make
And
it
that's
seem
what
like
they're breaking.
Yeah, and you make it seem like men are all evil and these men work so hard. Like
And
I
then
said.
a lot of men, like, I understand it. Like, if you're constantly being told that being masculine is toxic and all this stuff, you're also going to get resentful against women, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and it's being a good man is a thankless job. It's expected, you know? You're expected to be a good provider. You're expected to be a good father. You're expected to give up your life, your dreams, your goals, your ambitions as a man to take care of your family, because this is what men do. And it's a thankless job. You see it on Father's Day, right? Fathers, they get nothing, right? We celebrate mothers like it's the holy grail of everything. And that's great. And then now we're telling these radical feminists are saying to society that no, these men, these are the majority of men that break their back to make society functioning. They don't matter. They're evil.
Yeah.
Their very existence
They don't matter. They're
is a
evil,
threat.
or that we don't need them, which I think
Exactly.
that's so dangerous, because if we don't need man, like, who's going to teach my son how to be a man?
Exactly.
Or as a daughter, who's going to teach me how to deal with a man, how to interact with a man?
Exactly.
Both parts are essential.
Exactly. And we're on this stupid conversation about toxic masculinity, you know, and why there's starting to be a backlash against it. Well, of course. How important is it to have a fully functioning family unit? And then we're now destroying that very fabric. And these feminists, the radical feminists, because this is some new wave BS going on, you know, attacking men. It's like, have you had a good man in your life? How are you spewing this hatred?
Yeah, that's exactly what I think of, because, you know, when I hear toxic masculinity, I'm like, okay, well, I think of my brother. I don't think he's toxic. I think of my cousin who's like a brother. I don't think he's toxic. I think of friends that are male. I don't think they're toxic. My grandfather, I don't think they're toxic.
Like, have you had a good man in your life at all, from childhood to anything? Like, do you just hate men this much? I'm telling you, I think this toxic masculinity, this patriarchy crap is a small subset of women that have never had any good relationships with men in their lives, boiling down to their fathers in childhood, and then they project all this crap out in society. You know, they made decisions to never depend on a man and keep my head down and work so hard, and they see all their friends happy in relationships with men, with children, doing the complete opposite of them that they've busted their ass like a man to do. And now you got to project all that gibberish on a society and tell women of all the hypocrisies of feminists is that they shame women the hardest. They do worse by women than men do. Men could ever do. They're over here checks and balances on a woman's behavior, a woman's aspirations, a woman's worth. This is what feminists are doing to other women. Under the guise of what? Progressiveness, empowerment.
Equality.
How do you empower a woman by tearing her down? as another woman. Hypocrisy.
Makes no sense.
Exactly. This is why this new age feminism is not popular amongst even women. It's a very small minority, and for good reason. People see through the veil, the BS. Sick. We're devaluing men at the expense of what? What is this going to cost us?
Not looking good.